customers, what customers feel about these issues, but also looking very much at diversity. What we said before, we have to remember that different customers are appropriate for different services and different benefits, and not everyone gets the same deal. So, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you to give me this last word, but I hope we'll have a good discussion afterwards. So, I'm Grégoire Wallenborn from the Free University of Brussels. My background is physicist and philosopher, but I've been studying household energy consumption for 10 years now. And I'm going to present you some result of a report written with my colleague Frederick Klopfert. And the report was funded by the BEUC. You know the BEUC now, it's the European Consumer Organization. So a lot of objects and appliances are becoming smart. But what can we say about consumer and users? Can we really beg on a kind of transmission of smartness from technology to people? To answer to this question, I will first remind us what are the multiple objectives of smart metering, and I will try to clarify the idea of active consumers. How far can feedback help really consumers to save energy? That will be my main question. We'll get some answers in analyzing different results of 6 large European studies, and I will interpret these results in terms of diversity of interest and capabilities among the consumers. And I'll then conclude in trying to draw some policy lessons. But beforehand, I'd like to start with a graph of the International Energy Agency. Indeed, to prevent climatic disaster with some reasonable probability, greenhouse gases concentration should be kept below the threshold of 450 parts per million. And in this IEA scenario, end-use efficiency improvement should contribute to the half of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. End-use efficiency concerns both technology efficiency and behavior change. So it's a very, very important issue. How can we do something about user to save energy and to be more efficient? And I think we have, in this perspective, you know, I'm working in the Center for Sustainable Development, so I'm trying to look at longer term, and we have to look behind 2020 and keep in mind that all decisions that will be made for 2020 should not limit us in further action. And we can be a bit, we should be cautious about technological lock-ins that we are developing through smart metering. So we have to ensure that current policies look beyond 2020. However, efficiency and decrease of energy consumption are not really integrated in the smart grid and smart metering development, as I'm going to show now. I think we can see smart metering from 3 main points of view. The first one, smart meter is conceived as a tool to raise consumer awareness and promote energy savings. On the second hand, it is considered as a part of the smart grid. And on the third point of view, it is a tool for changing the electricity markets. And I've distributed the different kinds of functionalities you can have around a smart meters. And all these functionalities are obviously linked to the bandwidth infrastructures and all the technology of information infrastructure. And it is quite clear that the functionalities doesn't correspond to the interest of all the actors. Some actors have more interest in some functionalities. And it is not clear in this scheme what is expected from consumers. Do smart grids require smart and reactive users, or on the contrary, more passive users who would delegate decision to the technology? I think we have heard this morning different versions of this dilemma. And I think I can give you a kind of caricature. From what I've heard from many engineers is that people are too irrational, and then they prefer to delegate all the decision to the system and to the machines. But on the other hand, economists think that people should become more rational. And because if they are rational, they will be able to calculate what are their benefits, and they will behave accordingly. I think, obviously, that none of these two pictures is true. Nevertheless, there are a lot of actors calling for making consumers more active. To foster the development of smart metering, many discourses and documents use the following rationale. Accurate and personalized information about consumption will entail energy savings because it allows people to learn how they consume energy. That is the main argument supporting feedback. But I think there are many assumptions in all this discourse and document. And I've listed here the main assumption that you can find. And, well, consumers want to know more about their bills and the energy prices. Feedback is a necessary element. People react to external stimuli in predictable ways, etc. And I think all these statements are not false by themselves. They are just too general to encompass the big diversity of consumer. And my position, and what I've seen in a lot of studies, is that information is probably necessary to change behavior, but it's never sufficient because people are embedded in their infrastructures and in habits. So we have to remind that feedback is also at the moment only based on aggregated electricity consumption, and that is very difficult for people to interpret a load curve, even of their own household. Up to recently, feedback studies showed that electricity consumption could decrease, electricity could be saved by 10 to 15% with a direct feedback. But as I've done some experiments in providing in-home displays to different kinds of households, I was quite surprised by this result. And so I began to ask some questions, but who participates really to all these pilots, all these experiments? Is it possible for everybody to save such an amount of electricity? And how people use really and appropriate an in-home display? And what do people learn and how they can save really energy? They are all questions that are not usually asked in all these feedback studies. And I think the recruitment process is very important. We have these figures because these pilots are based on the recruitment with people who are willing to play with these new games. And then I've looked to more recent and large European studies. I have selected these 6 big studies because they've got a significant number of participants. They respect scientific methodology. They are control groups. They are attentive to the recruitment process. And there is a huge description of methodology. So you know how these figures are built. And from my scientific point of view, it is very important. So I can figure out how these data are produced. And it's quite clear from all these studies that in the best cases, it's only on the best case that you can have 2 to 4% of energy saving. Best case mean a direct feedback with in-home display and energy advisors, or indirect feedback through a website with energy advisors. And what was very striking also, it's that the Scottish Power experiment under the EDRP, means Energy Demand Response Project. It was a big project coordinated by the Ofgem. And Scottish Power showed, the Scottish Power experiment showed no effect. And because they have deployed partly smart meters in household without informing household that they've got a smart meters. And for me, you can say, okay, people didn't know that they were observed. But my interpretation, it means that they don't have selected people who were just willing to play with the smart meters. Also, things to be noticed is that that reduction is for the first year, and usually in this experiment we see that the savings are lowering with the years. So. From also my own studies, I can say that the appropriation of an in-home display is possible mainly when people are already interested in energy conservation. And that current feedback yields very small change, because there are a lot of practices or behaviors in your home that are not negotiable. There are a lot of things, of practice that makes you consuming energy, that you can't really change. You can switch off lights, standby, switch a bit your demand, but there are not so many things to do in your home. And I think then my conclusion is that opting for smart meter and feedback is determinant in the way people will use the smart meters. So in this table, I have drawn the potential savings in different households. And I have classified the households according to the interest they can have towards energy savings, and also their capability to save energy. Capability means competences, skills, also financial resources. And you can also I have classified people according to their consumption, and obviously the best people, or the best household to target is the people who consume already a lot of energy and who are interested and capable. But we can ask ourselves whether they exist, because this kind of people probably have already done something. How then can we engage people in energy saving with smart meters and feedback? I think a way to do that is to reframe the energy issue. Here, I give you just some ideas that need obviously to be discussed. But the way today energy is seen, I think, should evolve. And social norm, obviously, will evolve, and people will have to adapt to new requirements. And a way to do that is, for instance, to go towards progressive tariffs, which means that low consumers are rewarded, but high consumer will pay more by the added unit of kilowatt hour. Another idea coming from a research is that energy could be linked to a complementary currency. I haven't got time to go into detail, but the idea is that today people don't consume energy. They use a lot of appliances that provide many services to them, but they don't link energy to their practice. And you have heating, mobility, electricity, and if you had a currency to buy energy, a common currency, you would begin to think about the relationship between the different practices that consume energy. I think also the community level is very important. Today, consumption is seen as an individual act, but in the perspective of a community of energy, when people will have to produce and consume their own energy, they will also share their energy. So it's a good way to raise awareness among people, I think. And at the end, I think energy saving should become more a public issue. Energy price increase is sometimes a public issue, but I don't hear so much the energy saving requirement in the public debate. I'm always also interested by other ideas. And that's my last slide. That's a proposal we have in the report for the book. We think from all the precedent observation that to meet the high diversity of consumer and also the fast-moving technology, and to avoid technological lock-ins, we believe that smart meters should be modular. It means that you could be able to come and plug in different kinds of application that will fit with the interest of different groups of consumers. And also, I'm very interested in the consumer access to their data. So I'm pleased to hear that in Britain it will be the case, because you can imagine that people interested in their energy consumption and who are a bit geek, let's say, will try to make some new devices that they can share and so on. And so I think it's very important to have a kind of open source data around smart grids. It will foster creativity, and I think it will also make possible a fast development that we need. Well, that's the Green Peasant initiative. Maybe I'll come back later. So if I had time, I would rephrase my talk in a more understandable terms. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, I think, can we have the speakers up here, please, quickly? If the speakers come up here, and while they're coming, well, just come and sit down. I'll ask a few questions. And yeah, please, yeah. And so we, and also said the audience, feel free now to think up some questions. I have some questions as well. I would say you probably noticed that at least the research that we've done, that I mentioned, and the Buke research are rather different in terms of the findings. And I would actually suggest that if you want to compare those two, thank you, I would suggest that if you want to compare those two, you should actually go and look at both. So if you go to the ESMIG website, you'll find our START projects. And if you go to Buke, you'll find there. So it's probably good to look at both and compare the two. I would say at least from the 100 pilots that we've studied in detail, the interesting thing is that I think we've found that actually savings increase over time if the programs were designed to be long-term. Very often programs are designed to be short-term, and that's why they gain short-term benefits. When you get enough projects, you actually see that. But okay, so I'd like to then, I've got a number of questions, but maybe I'll just start off with a couple of questions here to all of you, and I'll actually let any of you answer. So if you just say, and I'll give you the mic. First of all, I think when we're talking about costs and benefits, there's one issue that maybe we sometimes forget. We say that by having, for example, when we looked at, for example, the costs and benefits, it's true that, of course, if you have DR, demand response, there's less need for storage, right? On the other hand, if you have storage, there maybe is less need for demand response. Now, in this industry, we kind of have everyone who, of course, thinks they have the best solution, whether on the generation side, the storage side, or the demand side. Is it an issue that how do we make sure, and maybe this is more for you, how do we make sure that everyone doesn't sort of, we don't build stacks of storage saying that this, so that we don't need demand response if we do that. At the same time, we'll build stacks of demand response so that we don't need the storage. In the end, we just end up with a lot of everything, and so we actually haven't gained any of the benefits. Does anyone have an opinion on that? Can we avoid that? Do you have anything? Yeah.
Well, I think it's the market mechanism. So in the end, the market will decide which is feasible in the short term and which will remain feasible in the long term. And I think demand-side management at this point in time and in the near future is the most economic solution. Storage, of course, is very expensive, as we all know. If the prices of storage will decrease, then it may become more economical, and maybe in the end it will replace demand-side management. But this is about the technology that advances, a market that advances, and I don't think we can set in concrete right now what would be the ultimate solution. The market will evolve and will decide.
Anyone else? Yep, Colin.
I think that's right, but I also think the energy markets are designed. They are constructs, and my own view is that there's some quite important market design questions that you need to address in order to make sure that you do integrate the different uses into one kind of market process. It's not the case at the moment. We are having a debate in the UK at the moment about the design of a capacity mechanism and how you integrate the demand side into that. And these are design questions, and they need to be addressed, and they are quite complicated. But if you don't, you do end up with the fragmented solution, which will be more expensive.
Okay, I mean, maybe I'll then open it to the audience. But one other question is that I would have. Oh, sorry. Did you want to contribute to that? Yeah.
Question.
Okay, sure. Far away.
Okay, Peter Hermans from State in the Netherlands. I recognize that we are in a metering conference, but this morning we talked a lot about the topic of consumer engagement. And my question is, aren't we addressing that from the wrong point of view? Because I see everybody struggling with how do we get the consumer engaged in the metering thing and how to save money. On the other hand, I see customers also with those society concerns on the energy savings and the low carbon challenges. Everybody is installing PV panels. It's actually an exponential growth, so there is a lot of customer engagement from that side of the house on the energy system itself. Actually, the engagement is going up to such a level that it will run us bringing into problems. So shouldn't we start at that point of the equation?
Anyone have any opinions on that? I mean, I think that, of course, the issue is that there are ways we can engage other than this, and we had that question earlier, I mean, whether we need to be engaged in smart meters. I mean, we've had different views on that. I mean, of course, if people think they're spending a lot of money on smart meters, as in Britain, they know they're spending a lot of money, so therefore I guess they want to know they're not wasting a lot of money, and therefore you sort of have to justify why you're rolling out the smart meter. And in other places, such as Finland, they really haven't said anything about it. They've just kept quiet about it. And luckily, the media hasn't really caught on to the fact, luckily for their sake. But basically, does anyone have an opinion? Should we be engaging people? I mean, have we maybe gone too far with all this discussion about smart meters? Should we be talking more about the services? I mean, and how do we get out of this trap that we're in right now? It's just first, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned during my presentation, we very much see the smart meter as being an enabler, but it is about the services that customers want. And I think, as in any marketing proposition, you've got to start with the voice of the customer and find out exactly what they expect from the smart metering system. I mean, going back, I suppose, to the question, round about storage, one of the things we feel as a company is obviously wind energy is going to become more prevalent over time. So we're not going to have necessarily that, we can't store that energy. But what we can look for is services we could offer to customers. So for example, in the US, we are looking at thermal storage heating, something we have tried in the UK in the past. And in the past, in Great Britain, the storage heaters weren't the best by any stretch of the imagination, but we're looking to try and innovate more on that. There's an example that Philip mentioned earlier on in terms of, I think it was Norway, and actually using heating hot water at times where prices were low. So I think it is about starting at the customer end of things and getting products that match that particular need.
Yeah, sure.
I think the debate is also about what are the benefits for consumers. And there were a lot of discussion about how much energy can save consumers through smart meters. And if they can do a lot, so they can pay for them. And there was a big discussion about how far can we go. And I think it's very important to save energy. We know we have this big perspective on climate change and so on. And so smart meters appeared suddenly as a nice tools for a lot of different reasons. And unfortunately, it's not so simple, I would say. But if we want to to help people to save energy, we have to engage them in some other ways. But we have still, I think, to design the right policy for that.
Yeah, do you want to answer that first? Yeah.
Just one comment. I think that there will be several ways how to engage consumers. You said that many consumers are getting more and more interested in becoming producers. I think there are still several barriers to for let's say faster deployment microgeneration in terms of cost, in terms of technology, in terms of if people get the right advice, what kind of technology is suitable for them. Now, in terms of smart meters, we need to talk about future, what may be possible in the future. So not only what smart meters need to deliver today, but what they might need to deliver in the future. When we look at the consumer side, I think that we are going from complete disengagement to, let's say, high engagement, and there will be a long way how to do that. And it has been discussed, mentioned several times during this morning, what are the different ways how to do it. But it will be a quite long process, I think.
Do you want to say something?
Yes, well, my understanding is you are talking about the auto-generation, the prosumer. And this is when somebody decides to make auto-generation at home, it's really decide to be an active consumer, I mean the prosumer. One of the big functionalities or services of a smart grid is the capacity to integrate anyone using the grid for importing or exporting. And in my point of view, this is quite important that aggregating these producers is a factor. It's going to compete with the demand response. It's going to do some other services. It's going to be benefit. But the key point is when you are auto-consumer, it's per se you are going to take care of very much of the energy you are consuming. This is a very positive preconditions, as we say for the University of Brussels. If you want to participate, the first thing you want to be, you decide to participate. Then all the things are coming on top. One key point also is up to which extent a smart meter is going to help you. It's helping when you have different tariff for exporting or importing power, and then you have to record the time where you sell or you buy, and also some intelligence system for selling or buying the appropriate time. This is a key tool, I guess. But this technology to provide this functionality to a smart meter, I think, is under discussion. It's not obvious. All the smart meters installed today are capable to measure importing, exporting, and also to recognize tariff where present, let's say, data to make it such a management. It's still to develop, but this is a crucial point.
Good point. Yeah. Over here. Yep.
Hi there. The question probably targeted to the chap from Ofgem, but let's assume I'm a rational peasant in Britain, and I look at the option and, well, that's a smart meter, that's great. But unfortunately, being rational, I probably suspect that because my usage coincides with high levels of demand, the price of electricity I pay at that particular time, let's say 6 p.m., 7 p.m., I'm cooking, put the dishwasher on, etc., etc. That, I mean, I suspect that my bills may rise because my demand coincides with the peak. And therefore, how can you assure that consumers in Britain and other countries won't be, I hesitate to use the word ripped off, but will be taken advantage of by sort of forcing consumers into paying higher sort of prices at peak than they would regardless of their usage. You know, their usage may even fall, but their actual bills may rise because of that peak load curve.
Well, I think
is there a role for the regulator to stop that?
I think it's always quite dangerous to assume that people are rational. I think we need to realise people are a bit more rounded than that, and you know, sort of participate in an environment a bit broader, and there's wider cultural forces in terms of how they make their decisions. But I think there's the way in which you sort of ease in different types of offerings. So if you are thinking about time of use, I think it's a point that Philip made. It's in large part how you do these things that affect whether people accept what's happening to them, engage with it, and can benefit from it. So it might well be the case in this transition to help people build confidence in this new technology that you need to regulate certain aspects. You know, so one particular issue in the market in GB at the moment is tariff complexity, and this is absent smart meters. So the argument is that there are hundreds of tariffs out there. People find it very, very difficult to navigate their way through all those choices, and therefore disengage. And, you know, to use your own phrase, probably get a bit ripped off because of that. So how can you respond to that challenge in a dumb world without time-use tariffs? And regulation has a role to play. So we're doing some work at the moment to try and simplify tariffs in a way that helps people navigate. And you might well find in a smart world with different types of tariffs and different forms of information that you do need to regulate in a different way. You know, so there will be a role for regulation. You would also hope there's a role for competition. You know, so if a supplier is out there ripping off their customers, you would hope that one of their competitors would offer them a better deal, and you would hope that that exerts some discipline. But I think that you're right, there probably will be a role for regulation.
Can I just ask for a show of hands? How many people here in their homes have smart meters? I'd say less than half. How many people in their homes have an in-home display? Okay, much less than half. Just a few of you. Okay, because, you know, I was surprised because I've been researching these, and as a psychologist, really, and I've always been studying for many years these issues. But actually, recently, I got my own in-home display from my own retail company, just to actually really experience it as a real customer would, from the very point of view of, from the point I bought it, the whole service experience, the whole usage experience, and the interaction with my family in terms of how they use it. And I can tell you it's a Geo device, one of the Geo devices that my energy company is offering to us. And I must admit, I think that it would be much better if more of us actually had at least experienced what it is we're talking about in this industry. You know, in terms of engagement, you will be amazed when you have your family and you suddenly give this thing to a kid, or you give it to your wife. And I know there are going to be lots of customers who are not interested, and there are lots of customers who have far too much money and far too little time to worry about things like that. But I also know from the time when I was a child going with my mother collecting for cancer research and going around to massive, great £1 million houses in Britain asking for money for charity, and they would give you 50 pence. And then you go to a small house and they would give you £5. Maybe that's why they got a small house. But the fact of the matter is that this idea that rich people don't give a monkeys about money is not necessarily true. I know people that have plenty of money that are very careful with what they spend, and they're very interested to know. Now, it is what you said. It's certain people need certain things. But actually, when it's done well, it's amazing how engaging you can be. And when you look at some of those pilots that have been very unsuccessful, and as I said, it's the way that it's done, you can sometimes see exactly why they have been, because it's a service, it's an experience. And the thing I would argue to people sometimes is, if the iPad had been rolled out by anyone except Apple, would it have been so successful? It's not what you're doing, it's the way that you're doing it very often. But okay, so any more questions for you? Then otherwise, who would like to ask a question? One question I would say that goes back to what a few of you have said, is that smart meters don't benefit everyone in the same way. Ultimately, everyone is sort of paying for it. So, I mean, I guess in a way you can argue that some pay more than others, because if you pay a big bill, in theory, you're paying more. But not everyone benefits in the same way, even though everyone is kind of contributing to it. There's two questions there. Does that matter? You know, because with any kind of infrastructural thing, some people benefit more than others. A car driver benefits more than a cyclist from a motorway. But on the other hand, how do we try to address that problem? How do we try to solve this problem whereby we don't end up with, like Australia, where it's perceived that certain people are suffering because of smart meters and other people are benefiting from it? How do you think we can address that problem? Yeah.
So just a couple of points, then I'll pass it on. So I think there are elements of the overall benefits that you can regulate and capture to some extent for everyone. You know, so if benefits do flow through network management, then network tariffs are regulated, and you have a degree of control over making sure those benefits are socialized or appropriately allocated. So there are some cost elements that you can have a degree of control over, and that's just a policy decision how you do that, and you'd hope you do the right thing by the generality of consumers. I think for beyond that, you are looking for the right balance. You know, there are needs to protect consumers. You know, there are measures to put in place, and that's part of the overall policy design. But you also don't want to do that in a way that stifles otherwise beneficial things happening. So it is striking that balance, but there are certain things you can do to help.
Well, we can think that 50 or 100 euros a year for a smart meter is not a problem. But I know some association in Belgium that say, well, that's a problem for the fuel poor and so on. So they are raising the question of allocating fairly the cost of smart meters. So there is this issue. About functionalities and diversity of functionalities and how they could meet the diversity of consumer, I really think that modular smart meters could be a very nice and elegant way of doing that. So if you can imagine a basic meters with sockets and all the technological standards are existing, and so you could plug and upgrade quite often your meters with the new and advanced technology. And I think everybody would be able to choose what he or she wants.
That's an interesting point, but how does that feed back into costs? I mean, if you had a modular design and then you had to kind of, I'm thinking practically here, had to go back to it and plug things in. Of course, to some extent, if you have electric cars, you probably need to do some of that anyway, right, in the future. But what is your view on the cost side of that?
So it's in terms of retrofits to smart meters. I mean, I think what we'd always try to do is any upgrades to smart meters, we would try to do them over the air. So it would be firmware upgrades to the metering rather than actually doing any kind of retrofits. I think that the economics around about doing retrofits to smart meters are going to be pretty unpractical in most instances. So I think it would have to be managing these over the air in terms of doing that type of activity.
Any other comments on that one? Yeah. I would say that there was a point that was raised. Any other questions, please, from the audience? There was a point that was raised yesterday in one of the plenaries in the morning yesterday, no, on Monday actually, was it yesterday or Monday? We were saying it was a question or comment that was saying that we shouldn't be actually changing people's lives. And we very often hear about this issue of smart meters will revolutionize people's lives. And is the question that the comment was that we shouldn't be revolution, we shouldn't be changing people's lives, we should be kind of facilitating their life the way they want it to be. You know, what do you think in the future? I mean, do you think that, I mean, if we think of a few years down the line, how much do you think we're going to change? I mean, because you're right at the forefront of that, offering these services. How much do you think? And what about you? I mean, do you think that 5 years down the line, do you think the customer's life will be any different? Sorry, who's got the microphone?
Well, I think this is a question of facilitating or doing it. So a question of voluntary and mandatory rollout of smart meters, for example. I think that facilitating may result in better results than if we oblige somebody to accept something. And yeah, I don't know if you.
Yeah.
No, I don't think the advent of the smart grid is going to make any revolution for the consumer. I think it's not the intention for that. It's going to change that clear. It's going to be more evolution or revolution. I mean, it's going to change the game of utilities, network operators, and new services, ICT companies, etc., because it's going to change. But the consumer itself, no. The thing is, the consumer is going to find some options where today hasn't. And that's important. You can use or you can leave. I think this is the most important part. Like in any other market, what is the difference? I mean, we are more than 10 years, well, about 20 years, try to get the liberalization of the electricity market, and again, we are free energy package to get it. In other sectors like telecom, transport, liberalization was done with one only package. What is the difference here? What is the difference?
Yeah. Is it a mindset difference? I mean, I'll let you carry on, but do we have a mindset difference in this industry? You know, are we naturally sort of more restrictive in our thoughts, more negative in our thoughts, less optimistic? You know, when you look at other industries, you get the feeling that maybe they're feeling we're looking for solutions, we're looking for offerings and products. And in this industry, we're very much focused, I think, very often on, the reasons why we can't do things. I wonder if that's some sort of, it's a mindset in the industry. Different industries do have different philosophies. What do you think? Yeah. Sorry, I'll give it back to you after. Yeah.
I think we are a bit like that, to be honest, within the energy industry. I think we still treat energy as a commodity, and we don't really think about the service elements of that. So, for example, I believe that smart metering, smart grids will provide that infrastructure, a bit like broadband provides the infrastructure for people to use. Now, how you choose to use that is your personal choice. So you can choose broadband to stream film, to access the internet, etc. Or you could choose it just to watch, you know, very basic television channels, for example. So it's about, I think it's just about thinking innovatively, and it's about offering different propositions to different customer segments. I think I agree with Colin, we've got to make sure that the consumer protection is in place for those customers who maybe don't have the wherewithal to necessarily either want these services or access these services. So we do have to protect customers there. But I think we've got a fantastic opportunity into the future through the whole smart programme throughout, certainly Great Britain and elsewhere.
Can I ask you one question? Do you think you could have been, do you think that your sort of objectives for the future could have been achieved without smart meters?
It's an interesting question. You probably get different answers for different people within the industry. I personally think that we should move forward in terms of smart metering. I think it does allow us the opportunity to have more data that customers can use to make informed decisions. And I think that under existing arrangements, that level of data just doesn't exist.
Just coming back to the point about revolution and whether consumers want to be revolutionized or not, I think just one observation is that over time, in some markets, quite dramatic changes in behavior can happen without people really noticing. And I think the good example for me is energy efficiency when it comes to cars. So the energy efficiency of your average family car has probably gone up 100% in 10 years without people really noticing, you know, through the use of some quite sophisticated technology in terms of what engines are made of and so on. But that hasn't been, you know, have car users been revolutionized over the last 10 years? As a car user, I don't think I have, but I do appreciate the benefits of getting 60 miles per gallon in my family car. So maybe the equivalent can happen in energy, that these very, very big efficiency savings are possible through what looks to the consumer like quite a straightforward evolution.
Interesting. Manuel? Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think in the history of technology, we haven't never seen one single innovation revolutionize the life without at the same time changing the infrastructure. That was the case for the car you need, but also the meanings of the objects and multiplying the meanings that the objects can have. Also developing new competencies and skills to use the objects and so on. So one single object won't do the difference. We have to change a lot of things at the same time. And that's the difficulty towards a more sustainable consumption patterns.
Manuel, yeah, okay. Oh, so just Manuel first, maybe. Yeah, just one, and then I'll get, yeah.
You can follow the order.
Oh, no, okay. Do you want to do that first? Yeah, sorry, go, that's fair.
Okay, well, I believe that we can perfectly create a sustainable energy future without smart metering, without smart grids, even without customer involvement, except the question is against what price. And so I think the main issue about smart metering, about demand response, about smart grid is that this very costly energy transition can become a bit less costly if we involve the customer. And what does this then imply for the individual customer? Does it change his life? Well, not necessarily. If he does not want to get engaged, then everything will stay pretty much the same, except it will become, well, more and more expensive. And if you are able and willing to participate in the energy market, active participant, then you can also benefit from that in economical sense.
Well, the question is quite, I mean, quite fundamental, but depends very much on what we want. If we really want to have that anybody could connect to the grid and produce something or play on something, or just get a flat tariff also, that's another option, the grid of today is not capable to do that. This simply because it's not designed for that. It's designed to generate towards the consumption, but not to play from consumption or connecting power whatever in any nodes you want. I mean, the Kirchhoff's law are very tough on that. I can tell you that when I started some project on smart grid in the 2002, 2001, and that kind of project, we never thought, and we have no smart meter at all. Well, not necessarily, because we connect with the consumer by telephone, by messages. Now it's cheap, now they are sun, now you can connect. I mean, the key point here is the connectivity on the last mile. And the key point here is the consumer is the center of the approach. Without the consumer consent, you can do almost nothing. You can do business as usual. Produce when your Kirchhoff's laws show that you have to give power to feed some consumption. What we try to play here is involving the consumer into the production, generation, operation of the grid by a simple rules. And that's the key point. Connectivity is fundamental. And that's a smart meter is fundamental because it's going to record how much power you have consumed in a period of time at which price. Because at the end, which move consumer to consume or produce or not is the incentive, is the price. And you are making variation of the price. If the incentive would be another thing, you don't need a smart meter. Because why? You can meter in the transformer. And then no problem, and this is something, or even in a medium voltage, and without any problem. But the key point here is the connectivity with the consumer, because we are demanding an action from the consumer in order to operate the grid. That's the point.
Did you want to say anything? Okay. Okay, we kind of run out of time. I'd like to thank you, everyone, but I'd like to just say, to sort of round up in a way, that I think what we've seen is that between what is known, I think a lot is known about how we need to progress. I think we can see that we have to work on the benefits. We certainly have to get the customer buy-in. We can see there are some major weaknesses in that direction, but we also have to work on the costs, because when we're talking about cost benefit, it's not enough just to work on the benefits. We have to also work on the costs of that. But then at the same time, we're trying to create that platform. What the feeling is, in a way, that smart meters are providing a platform. They're rather like roads providing the infrastructure to drive on. But just like roads, if you built motorways 20 years ago and find out that today they're all empty, you would feel that you waste a lot of money. And I think that's exactly the same thing that we're looking at here. We have to make sure that we don't create this platform and in some years to come we end up with empty roads. But I think that the evidence is there, and I think it's great to hear the views that we have around the table. So thank you to the audience, and thank you to the panel, and have a great lunch. Thanks a lot. Thank you.